So we're back. Now we're going to talk about internal controls that should be in place. So we've already talked about understanding the production cycle. We've talked about the inherent risks in the production cycle. Now we're going to talk about what controls should be in place. So, as you know, the big risk is overstating inventory, right? That's the main thing. They're going to say they have more inventory than they really have. There's a couple different ways to do it, either through violating existence assertion, risks to completeness and cutoff. So we're gonna not completeness, but cutoff. So in order to make sure those assertions are true, management should put in place some controls. Right. So there should be controls like production runs are authorized. That way we're not getting production runs that are made just to build inventory and fudge the financial statements in terms of too many assets. Raw materials counted and inspected. Again, the client wants to make sure that their inventory is actually what they think it is. Materials should be summarized, so there should be worksheets, just like you learned how to use in cost accounting. There should be cost sheets. Inventory items should be accounted for. So yes, sometimes as production goes along, things are messed up and they become scrap. So things need to either be used, counted as scrap, or returned to inventory. There needs to be some form that people fill out or some computer screen they fill out to get materials transferred. You don't just walk, just like you wouldn't walk in a store warehouse in the back and take something and move it without authorization. You wouldn't do it with raw materials either. And certainly there needs to be what we'd call a physical count of the inventory. That's probably the main control. The transfer tickets and the physical counts are probably some of the main controls that you're going to be wanting to test and make sure they're using. The cost accounting. So remember in cost accounting when you learned how to do variances? Well, your client should be performing some variance analysis, because if their cost estimates aren't their budget, I guess I should say, not cost estimates. If their production budget isn't matching, they should go back and do some variance analysis, because it could be indicating somebody in the plant is doing something they shouldn't be doing. Purchasing department's doing something they shouldn't be doing, right? So if it ordinarily takes 5 tons of raw material to make whatever you're making, and you notice in your variance analysis it's taking 6 tons, maybe the purchasing agent is ordering inferior quality and pocketing some money or something like that, getting a kickback, right? Because think of the example, let's talk about crude oil. There's all kinds of crude oil. Did you know that? There's sweet crude and light crude and all different kinds of crude oil. And so different crude oil is easier or more difficult to make into certain products, right? And that's why it costs different. There's all different grades of crude oil, and you buy a certain grade. So if something you're using doesn't turn out, maybe it's the wrong grade, and maybe somebody's been getting a kickback or something, right? So that's what those variance reports can help you find. The labor, the overhead, the cost summaries. So those can all help you as an auditor, because I know we think of it as managerial accounting, but the work in process goes on to become the finished goods inventory, which goes on to become the cost of goods sold. So it is financial accounting. There should be controls for custody, right? The person who does the accounting for any portion of the inventory should not have custody of the inventory. You, as an auditor, can use an internal control questionnaire. The appendix of each chapter has some internal control questionnaires that will help you understand the controls in place. So what kind of activities are actually going on? Well, typical activities You might want to read this in your book just to make sure you get a good understanding. But for each assertion, your client's going to have some internal controls that you want to make sure are in place, right? Typically related to inventory, you want to make sure it's secure and they prevent theft. And of course, the main thing is that there's a physical count, an actual inventory of the inventory going on. The physical count is going to go to existence and completeness. Cutoff, getting in the right period. Well, you can tell from receiving reports when they came in. Right? So items should belong to your company that you're auditing, and not some other company that just has it on consignment there. You can tell this from contracts, from agreements, from purchase orders. When it was that it was purchased, it's not on consignment. That they have things. Some things actually have titles. If you're auditing a car dealership, cars have actual car titles. Or if they're brand new, they have a manufacturer's statement of origin. So those are things you can get hold of. And of course, valuation, that's a big problem. You should make sure that they're not obsolete, that they can still sell for the dollar value they have them in inventory. GAAP says we have to use lower of cost or market. And of course, when they put them in there, they probably put them in there at cost. And if market value drops, right? I mean, they wouldn't have made it, presumably, unless they're manufacturing for inventory, they wouldn't have made it if they thought it was going to be lower, market was lower than what it costs, right? But markets can change, right? We all know that. Cost of goods sold, definitely a problem with completeness because it's an expense. People want to understate expenses. So cost sheets can tell you, right, those documents you learned about in cost accounting, you can go through them, read them, and make sure that that's proper. All right, so when we come back next video, we're going to talk about how to test controls.